After the team test, you will have the opportunity to develop an ability to see parallel lines based on angle relationships. And the assignment you'll do will call for you to do some work on some software called Howe. The Howe software is in your computer, so not sure exactly where it's stored on your computer, so go ahead and search for Howe. That's HOWETWO. Find that software, and when you open it, the cover page looks like this. It's kind of a messy format, but I'll show you where everything is. We want to click on geometry, which is right underneath this guy's hand. So notice that there's two links. One goes to coordinate geometry and one goes to geometry. I'm asking you to put the mouse right on geometry and click to open this menu. And the exercise we're going to do is called Name the Parallels. So please remember what we discovered in GeoGebra, that when two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, corresponding angles are congruent. So this green angle is congruent to this green angle, purple congruent to purple, orange congruent to orange, red congruent to red. The term corresponding means they are in the same place relative to the intersection from translation to translation. Okay, so green is in the same position, that's upper right. Red is in the same position, that's upper left. Orange is in the same position, lower left. Purple is in the same position, lower right. And we have two pairs of supplementary angles in each case. Those are the relationships we're going to rely on to play the how-to game. So you click on this link that says ready for question. And you're given the information that angle 5 and angle 13 are congruent. So up here in this box, we have angle 5 and angle 13. Do you see that those are each in the lower left position relative to lines A and B? And if those two angles are congruent, then lines A and B must be parallel. Down here in this box, we have some choices. We can say that the horizontal lines A and B are parallel. We can say that the tilted lines or diagonal lines C and D are parallel, or we can say that we just don't know. We haven't got enough information. In this case, for angle 5 and 13 to be parallel, to be congruent, line A and line B have to be parallel. So this is the choice I'm making. And then I'll check my answer. I got the answer right. And over here in this box, the software is keeping track of my score. You're going to continue to play by hitting ready for a question and answering questions until you have 10 correct. Now it doesn't matter how many you have wrong. You're simply playing until the number of correct says 10. And I'm going to do a couple of more for you. Angle 2 and angle 3 are supplementary. Well, if this angle is supplementary to this angle, it's because this angle and this angle correspond, and this angle correspond. So take a look at it again. 2 and 3 are supplementary. These two are only supplementary when 3 corresponds to 1. And 3 is only congruent to 1 when C and D are parallel. I'm going to check my answer. I have 2 correct answers. I'm going to hit ready for a question, and I'm going to keep going like this until I have 10 correct answers. So I'm just going to keep analyzing the diagram. 8 and 12 are supplementary. That means they're a linear pair. Well, that's only true when 12 is congruent to 4, or when 8 is congruent to 16. Translation symmetry from this group of angles up to this group of angles only results in congruent groups when these two lines, A and B, are parallel. Now, 8 and 12 both have a relationship to the horizontal lines. Ready for a question? 1 and 14 are congruent. 1 and 14 are only congruent. This is a good one. When, see how 14 is congruent to 9 because they're a vertical angle pair? Well, that only happens when 9 and 1 correspond. And 9 and 1 correspond when we can translate angles 1, 2, 5, and 6 down onto 9, 10, 13, and 14. And that only happens when when line A and B are parallel. So your analysis continues to go like that. When 10 and 16 are supplementary, that's the new information I have here. When 10 and 16 are supplementary, that only happens when 10 and 14 are supplementary and when 14 corresponds to 16. So I need a way to translate this group of angles over to this group of angles and have them be congruent. And that'll only happen when C and D are parallel. So you're welcome to refer back to the GeoGebra file, or to just keep trying questions until you see the relationships. When angle 1 and 7 are supplementary, that only happens when 7 can be mapped onto 5. And that only happens when C and D are parallel. I'd like to do one where no known parallels exist, so let's keep going and see if I get one. 6 and 7 are supplementary. 6 and 7 are supplementary when 6 corresponds to 8. Do you see that the relationship between line C and D would have to be parallel for that to be true? 4 and 7 are congruent. Well, they're always congruent because they're a vertical angle pair. That gives us absolutely no information about any parallel lines in this diagram. So here's a good example for none are known to be parallel. I'm ready for question 2 and 7 are congruent. That only happens when 5 corresponds to 7 because 2 and 5 are a congruent vertical pair, and 5 and 7 are only congruent when these two lines, C and D, are parallel. So you have to develop an ability to look at the pairs of parallel lines separately as separate pairs from the other intersecting lines, and an ability to look at these angles individually and as groups that can translate together. So keep trying until you have 10 correct. 10 and 11 are supplementary when 10 corresponds to 12. That only happens when this group is translated onto this group, and that only happens with congruence when C and D are parallel. Once you have 10 correct, you use the snipping tool to take a screenshot of this whole box. I'll look for your score. You save the snip as the name those parallels score somewhere where it's easy to find. And you upload that to the Schoology assignment page.